She-wolf of France, England's happiness, hateful withered hag, Amazonian. These are just some of the epithets attached to Margaret of Anjou in Shakespeare's plays. But who was Queen Margaret? And how does Shakespeare's portrayal of her in the Henry VI plays and Richard III chime with his historical source materials? Margaret was born in the Duchy of Lorraine and was daughter of Rainier, the Duke of Anjou, a French nobleman. In 1444, the Duke of Suffolk negotiated her marriage to King Henry VI by proxy. Margaret was queen from 1445 to 1461, and she was restored to the throne between 1470 and 1471. Henry VI's reign was a turbulent one. He presided over much of the Wars of the Roses, the factious rivalry between the York and Lancaster houses. He was an ineffectual monarch, to the extent that Margaret tended to rule the kingdom in his stead. She took responsibility for recruiting armed support for her husband against Richard, Duke of York, a rival claimant for the throne. Shakespeare engaged with chronicle history materials when he came to write his Henry VI plays and Richard III, such as Edward Hore's The Union of the Two Noble and Illustrious Families of Lancaster and York, printed in 1548, and arguably his most important source of all, the 1587 edition of Raphael Holinshed's Chronicles of England, Scotland and Ireland. As well as being an historian, Hore was a lawyer and Member of Parliament, and he described Margaret as a woman who excelled all other, as well in beauty and favour as in wit and policy, praising her courage in particular. Hore's account of Margaret's life reveals a devastating tale of rise and fall, certainly worthy of an Elizabethan drama. Holinshed records that Margaret had great courage, that she was furnished with the gifts of reason, policy, and wisdom. However, the chroniclers also claim that such traits are dangerous in a woman. Shakespeare similarly emphasises Margaret as a character who inverts what were considered normative gender roles during the period. When her husband weeps for the death of his uncle Gloucester in Henry VI Part 2, Margaret essentially tells him to pull himself together.
What? Dost thou turn away and hide thy face? I am no loathsome leper. Look on me. What? Art thou like the adder, waxen death? Be poisonous too, and kill thy forlorn queen. Is all thy comfort shut in Gloucester's tomb? Well then, Dame Margaret was ne'er thy joy. Erect his statue and worship it, and make my image but an alehouse sign. Was I for this nigh wrecked upon the sea, and twice by awkward wind from England's bank drove back again unto my native clime? What boded this? But well forewarning wind did seem to say, seek not a scorpion's nest, nor set no footing on this unkind shore.
Margaret is a powerhouse, as we can also see in Henry VI Part 3, when she captures York during the Battle of Wakefield, making him stand on a molehill and wear a paper crown. She also bids him wipe his tears with a handkerchief smeared in his son's blood. Moreover, she harangues York for over 40 lines.
Come, set him on this molehill here, that wrought at mountains with outstretched arms, yet parted but the shadow with his hand. What? Was it you who would be England's king? Was't you that revelled in our parliament and made a preachment of your high descent? Where are your mess of sons to back you now? The wanton Edward and the lusty George? And where's that valiant crook-backed prodigy, Dicky your boy, who with his grumbling voice was wont to cheer his dad in mutinies? Or, with the rest, where is thy darling Rutland? Look, York, I stained this napkin with the blood that valiant Clifford, with his rapier's point, made issue from the bosom of the boy. And if thine eyes can water for his death, I give thee this, to dry thy tears withal. Alas, poor York, but that I hate thee deadly, I should lament thy miserable fate. I prithee, breathe, to make me merry, York.
The real-life Margaret wasn't present at Wakefield, but in performance, this is an edge-of-your-seat moment, because the audience is waiting to see how York will respond to her, and he doesn't disappoint. He delivers a powerful invective that provides a great example of Shakespeare's early, bombastic, dramatic style.
She-wolf of France, though worse than wolves of France, thy tongue more poisons than the adder's tooth. How ill beseeming is it in thy sex, to triumph like an Amazonian troll upon their woes whom fortune captivates, but that thy face is vizard-like, unchanging, made impudent by use of evil deeds. I would essay, proud queen, to make thee blush. 'Tis beauty that doth oft make women proud, but God, he knows, thy share thereof is small. 'Tis virtue that doth make them most admired. The contrary doth make thee wondered at. 'Tis government that makes them seem divine. The want thereof makes thee abominable. Thou art as opposite to every good as the antipodes are unto us. O tiger's heart, wrapped in a woman's hide.
York heaps up Margaret's faults, and this masterly speech seems to have ruffled the feathers of Shakespeare's fellow dramatists. The line, "O tiger's heart, wrapped in a woman's hide," is paraphrased in the first allusion to Shakespeare as an actor-dramatist in London, in the 1592 pamphlet, Green's Groat's Worth of Wit, bought with a million of repentance. During Shakespeare's time, femininity was often linked to compassion and kindness, whereas masculinity was more likely to be associated with direst cruelty, to quote Macbeth. Women tended to be excluded from what was seen as the principally male domain of violence. In plays of the period, female characters were more frequently portrayed as victims rather than agents of destruction. But Shakespeare's Margaret is a warrior whose words have a sonically assaultive effect. She's also a vengeful female role. There are several dramatic figures that might have provided templates for Shakespeare, such as Clytemnestra in Aeschylus's Theban plays, and the women who engage in plots of revenge in the Roman tragedian Seneca's dramas, but none of Shakespeare's Elizabethan precursors came close to this virtuoso female character. We see a very different Margaret in Richard III, however. She's become a rather ghostly figure, especially as historically she wouldn't have been in the English court during that play's events, and died around a decade before the Battle of Bosworth Field. She therefore casts a shadow of fatality over the play and its characters. Having lost everything, she's mocked and scorned at court, called a foul, wrinkled witch and a false, boding woman. But she has a warning for her interlocutors, a prophecy about Richard, Duke of Gloucester.
What? Dost thou scorn me for my gentle counsel, and soothe the devil that I warn thee from? Oh, but remember this another day, when he shall split thy very heart with sorrow, and say, poor Margaret was a prophetess. Live each of you the subjects to his hate, and hate in yours, and all of you to God's.
Richard later becomes king, and Margaret's prophecies prove true. In Shakespeare's dramatisation, Richard's reign splits hearts for sorrow, and other characters acknowledge that Margaret's curse is fallen upon their heads. Margaret's character arc in Shakespeare's historical dramas is tremendous. If we add all her lines in the Henry VI plays and Richard III together, she turns out to be the largest female part Shakespeare wrote. She's a complex character, vengeful, vindictive even, but also a savvy diplomat, a warrior, a prophetess. Like so many of Shakespeare's roles, she has the ability to appall us, but also to evoke our sympathy, even make us cry. And though Shakespeare's Margaret reaches beyond her historical framework, the figure on which she was based is no less fascinating.